Hey guys, Dan here with this week's TV news and reviews, part of our sort of self-quarantine here. Every day I'm trying to get a new video posted up on the YouTube channel, so even though it's only been 5 days since we did our last TV news and reviews, it is time for another one. Partially because I keep saying this, I was sick for like a week in January, so I've been trying to post the TV news and reviews like every 5 to 6 days instead of every week. Sometimes, some weeks it happens, some weeks it doesn't, but this will definitely get us back on track, I'm sure. The problem is, with COVID-19 sort of ravaging through the country here, a lot of TV stuff has been put on hold, so the next few weeks there may not be all that many new things to review, so we may have to delve back into some older stuff that I have not caught up with yet, or what have you. But for now, I do have 3 new shows to talk about with you. And let's see, they are Temple, which is actually a show from England, from Sky One, that just started airing last week on the Spectrum channel, which is where the new Mad About You reboot is. Most people don't have it, but, if you can find it, then we'll review the show. HBO has a new miniseries called The Plot Against America, based on a Philip Roth book, so we'll talk about that. And then one that I had put off from last week, because last week we seemed to have a bunch of stuff to talk about. That is Apple TV Plus's Amazing Stories. It is an anthology series, though, so the reason I chose that one of all the ones from last week to put off is because I like to give anthology series at least 2 episodes before I review them, because it's really unfair to give an anthology series a review after just 1 episode, because each episode has different actors and different plot lines and stuff. So there are now 2 episodes up on Apple TV Plus, so we'll take care of that. But first, let's get to the news. Obviously, most of the news has to do with, in fact, I guess all of the news has to do with the coronavirus and how it is sort of playing with the television world. We talked a little bit about this last week in terms of like productions being shut down for fear of contamination, or some sets did have people that had tested positive, so but everything was kind of shut down. So we talked about that part last week, but there's a bunch of stuff that was sort of announced this week, or that is stuff that's being affected that we didn't really get to discuss last week, or it wasn't brought even to my attention, really. But first, let's talk about some of the things that are pretty big that have now been postponed. Basically, all shows have been shut down unless it's like a news show or something. So anything that wasn't filmed for the end of the season, we said this last week, they're pretty much, the season is over. If it ends on a weird episode and not the way they wanted to end the season, well, too bad. They'll just have to pick it up in September, or whenever they can record again. But one of the big ones is, this was just announced today, the Friends reunion on HBO Max, which was supposed to be like one of the big cornerstones for people to get HBO Max right off the bat. That has been postponed. They had not filmed it yet. And it's basically just going to be like an hour roundtable discussion with the cast and, I guess, some of the creators. But HBO Max is still going to launch, as far as I know, as planned, so it will do it with the entire Friends library of episodes, but it will not have this reunion special, most likely, I would say. It's still a couple of months away. I mean, I think it's early June or something that HBO Max is launching, so it's possible that something could happen between now and then, but most likely it's not going to be on there. The Daytime Emmy Awards have been postponed. That usually happens in June as well. The regular Emmys, the primetime Emmys, happen in September, so maybe they will do something more along those lines, but that has been pushed back. And also the ACM Awards, the Academy of Country Music, which I don't follow country music, and I don't watch any of those types of award shows. I don't even barely watch the Grammys anymore, and I like pop music, but, sometimes award shows are too much. But they're doing something very interesting, because it's televised every year, and so they're keeping their slot on the schedule. It's April 5th, but instead of doing a ceremony, obviously they can't do that, so they're going to have a roster of people, and they have not announced who yet, but obviously, probably a lot of the top country stars of today are going to be doing like acoustic songs from their homes, and then also there will be sort of a retrospective that I guess producers will put together based on some of the highlights of the last 55 years of the award. So with that being said, I don't know if the awards are still going to be given out. They may be like announced, but just not in a ceremony form. So that's possible too, I guess. They'll maybe still do that. But either way, there's going to be something for the country fans on that night. Broadway has been dark now for about a week and a half. It will continue to be dark for easily. I mean, the initial thing was 30 days for Broadway. So I'm of the belief personally that this is going to last a lot longer than the 2 or 3 week shutdowns these states have had. So, let's all brace ourselves here. But Rosie O'Donnell, a huge fan of Broadway. She's been in many Broadway shows over the years. Grease, I remember, was a big one for her. But she is going to be doing on both Broadway.com and YouTube a sort of variety type show, reminiscent, I guess, from what I've read, like her 90s talk show, but I think it's going to be less talking and more, variety, because there are dozens and dozens and dozens of performers and people that are going to be here for this. I think it's kind of going to be like a telethon type of thing, so perhaps many of these people will, go do a bit and then they'll go answer phones. There's no word on how long it's going to be, but it will air at 7 p.m. Sunday night on Broadway.com and YouTube. And the list of people is huge. Anybody that has some sort of good Broadway connection is going to be a part of this. People ranging from Lin-Manuel Miranda to Judith Light, from Who's the Boss, to Billy Porter from Pose, to Andrew Rosales. A lot of the people, I guess, who are based in New York, maybe the people that live in LA that sometimes do Broadway, they probably, like Neil Patrick Harris, I don't think was on the list. I think he lives in LA, though. Maybe I'm wrong. But either way, I didn't see his name on the list. But yeah, there's going to be a ton of people. So for you Broadway fans, it's basically going to help raise funds for all these people who are now out of work for a few weeks. Obviously Broadway is the focal point of New York entertainment, certainly in Times Square, and has been for, decades, a century at least, right? So I think this is very cool. I will try and remember to watch it. I still have my full-time job because I work from home anyway. I do work part-time at a movie theater. Some of you know that, but I've been working 8 hours a day this whole time. But Saturday and Sunday, that's going to be a different story. I will have nothing to do, so I am definitely going to, catch up on some viewing and as well try to catch some of these shows, that are on the internet. A lot of people doing live concerts as well, that you can catch sort of here and there on the person's YouTube channel or on Facebook Live or what have you. So that's something to look out for as well. Okay, so late night. Yes, late night obviously has been shut down. I talked about last week that the last couple of nights of last week were just filmed without an audience, but now people like Fallon and Colbert are sort of doing their own thing from their homes. They're doing different monologues and what have you. Conan has announced that he will come back on March 30th, so in about a week and a half, and he's going to do shows filmed with his iPhone. And I don't know if that means, when he says his show, I don't know whether that means actually like FaceTiming with a celebrity and doing it that way, or what, but I'm a huge Conan fan, so I'm always up for that. And he made some kind of joke that, even on an iPhone, the quality of a show can't get any lower. So that's how we'll do it. But yeah, so everybody's sort of finding their own way to do things. And speaking of late night, with Stephen Colbert not in the Ed Sullivan Theater, a lot of these CBS news organizations have moved into the Ed Sullivan Theater because there were a couple of staffers on CBS News that were positive for the coronavirus. So with Ed Sullivan empty, they moved CBS This Morning and the CBS Evening News and probably 60 Minutes offices as well into this space. So I don't have I mean, I have like an antenna, so I do get CBS, but I haven't watched like one of their broadcasts yet to see how the background looks different, or maybe it doesn't. Maybe they brought all the set pieces over too. I don't know, but that will be in there for now. Other than that, the whole sort of news landscape is changing a little bit with certain people taking leave. Like, for example, Joy Behar. They're still doing episodes of The View with no audience, but they're still getting together and talking about the topics of the day and whatnot. I'm not sure if they're having guests on or not, but in any event, Joy Behar has taken temporary leave on the show. She is in her 70s at least. She might even be 80. I mean, she looks good. She's got, obviously some work done, and she's got some great wigs, but she is getting up there in age. So she kind of said, you know what, I'm of the most susceptible age group for this virus to get real bad, so I'm going to take absence. So she is off of The View. And then also ABC, speaking of The View, took off the new Michael Strahan show that's supposed to be like the quote-unquote fourth hour of Good Morning America. That I think it airs here at 1 p.m. in the afternoon. It doesn't air right after Good Morning America, but in any event, ABC has taken that off temporarily to bring you a daily, hour-long coronavirus news show, basically, and update everything. Trump's been doing morning press conferences and stuff from the White House, so obviously they'll cover that stuff, and they'll go in depth a little more with the stories and the science behind it, and I'm sure like how many cases we have and how Italy is holding up and all that. So that's going to be part of that. Also, they brought Nightline back to the 11:30 slot where it originated about 40 years ago. It had swapped with Jimmy Kimmel Live, I want to say maybe 5 or 6 years ago, and that way Jimmy Kimmel rather could go more head to head directly with Fallon and Colbert, or Letterman at the time, Leno and Letterman, I guess, at the time. But so if you're a real good news junkie, ABC to me has always been a very good source. My family always watched the ABC Nightly News with Peter Jennings when I was growing up, so I've always trusted ABC in that way. So if you're a fan of their news coverage, then you can enjoy Nightline now an hour earlier at 11:30. So all of these things are changing. One other thing I wanted to mention before we get to some of the bigger stories is that FX as well has 2 episodes of Fargo left. So Fargo is not premiering as it was supposed to. Season 4 of Fargo, I thought it was Season 3, but apparently it's Season 4. Unless the article I read was wrong, but I don't know. Apparently it's Season 4. But Chris Rock and Jason Schwartzman are in it, and there's still 2 episodes left. And with a show like that is very, very serialized, you can't just show the 8 or whatever that you filmed and just leave people hanging until you can produce the others. So that is on hold indefinitely for now, which is a real shame because FX was sort of hoping that would be a big linchpin for their Emmy strategy come September. That may not be happening at this point, so we'll have to see about that. One thing that I found interesting in my sort of reading about how the coronavirus is affecting TV, so Big Brother Germany, the people in that house have been some of the last in the world to not know about the coronavirus. And it reminded me of when Big Brother here in America, when 9/11 happened, they had just, I think, started to record the season. I think because obviously September 11th, so I think the season had just started, and they were in the house maybe for like 2 weeks before the 9/11 attacks, and it was a big sort of conundrum for CBS to, okay, do we break rank, because you're not allowed to know anything of the outside world with Big Brother. Family members die, you don't know. World events, you don't know. So I remember they took them aside and said, okay, here's what happened. This is 9/11. Like, this is real. Like, this isn't part of the show. Da, 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 da. So the Big Brother Germany people still do not, or maybe they do now. I read the article, I think 2 or 3 days ago, but in Germany, they don't know about coronavirus. So they were going to do a similar approach as they did here with 9/11, and kind of take them aside and say, okay, here's what's going on, sit them all down together, say, do you have any questions? And then allow them, I guess, to call their loved ones or something and talk to them. But I guess in this version of Big Brother, or maybe just this season, people were sequestered anyway. They had two separate houses that they were living in, so they were already sort of under a little bit of a quarantine, I guess, anyway, except for the virus-infested hot tub, I'm sure. But yeah, I think it's very interesting because, we on the outside, world of Big Brother, I don't even watch Big Brother, but, it's not something I think about like, oh, yeah, this happened. Like, like if the president, got killed or something and we had a new president, like, how does that work on Big Brother? Do we tell them? And, I took a couple of, my degree's in broadcasting, so I took several, like, broadcast management type classes, and one of them was, like, news. I forget what the class itself was called, but it was generally about, like, how to present the news, like live news that's been really horrible. And this was before 9/11 happened, so, our go-tos were, like, Senator Bud Dwyer, who killed himself on national television at a press conference, which I remember as a kid, because it was like a snow day or something, so all the kids were home watching Price is Right, and they broke into Plinko to show this guy, offing himself. And so, it's very interesting to sort of think about, okay, these people literally have no idea what the coronavirus is, that it's killed all these people, that people around the world are being quarantined and self-quarantined, and stores are closed, and so it's just very wild. I thought that was an interesting article about Big Brother Germany. Hopefully they know by now, or they will very soon. But the other thing that I didn't really get to cover last week because I wasn't sure how affected everything would be. But two major things have been affected in the TV world by COVID-19. And that is, number one, the network upfronts that usually happen in May are not happening. And if they do, they're going to be virtual. Now, what the upfronts are is all the 5 major networks, NBC, ABC, CBS, Fox, and the CW, come out and present their new shows. They trot out, their big celebrities and talk about, what's in store for the next season of, Brooklyn Nine-Nine, or, SVU, or Chicago Fire, or whatever, if you're NBC. And so those upfronts are now postponed. It's mostly for advertisers, so advertisers can see, okay, these new shows are where I want to spend my money, or, oh, cool, this show's gonna take that twist. Let's throw our ad dollars there. But even more than that, and sort of in conjunction with, there were 60 pilots currently being produced for both network and cable, and all 60 of those have been postponed. None of them have been completed, as far as I know. A few of them had started a little sooner than others, but all 60 pilots for the pilot season are now shelved for the moment. So what does this mean? Well, depending on how long the sort of quarantine and closures last here, they could not be ready for the fall. Or if they are ready for the fall, networks may not want to take chances on them because they don't, they didn't get to show them to advertisers, they didn't get to show them to critics yet. So things that were produced for summer, especially a lot of like unscripted shows, game shows, reality shows, they may be pushed center stage in the fall on these network schedules. Or networks may decide to forego pilots entirely and just say, okay, you know what, we like this idea. How about you give us a couple of new scripts instead of actually producing a show, and we'll gauge them based on how we like the scripts. That's very possible. But one other theory that I read is it may help shows that are so-called on the bubble, which means they may get renewed, may not get renewed. So something like ABC's Bless This Mess, for example. It does okay for them, but are they going to definitely renew it? No. Is it definitely a canceled show? No. It's somewhere in the middle, and what I read was this sort of shutdown of pilot season will help networks decide that they may keep more on the bubble shows because at least it's something that's been tested and been out there. So it is a very, very interesting landscape. And ABC actually has been the first network in terms of broadcast to say we're going to do a more round-the-calendar broadcast season and not just 1 month here in March and April to get out all the pilots. We're going to be doing pilots year-round. Which is kind of how Netflix does it and how a lot of cable stations do it, because they don't adhere to like September, third week of September the fall schedule starts, so they're more flexible in that regard. So it means a lot of things here. So we'll see what's going on. People are still writing. Writers' rooms are going online and doing this Zoom application. CBS bought Zoom, I guess, for all of their shows. And so they're sort of sharing scripts that way, everybody working from their own house. So people are still writing, although there was slated to be a writer's strike in April, which obviously it's not going to happen now, but it may happen when this is all over. So it's like it may be sort of double whammy for some of the networks. So it's all very interesting, and every day brings new information about the whole thing, just across the country and across the world. So not just TV obviously is affected, but everybody has been pretty much affected by this. So that is all the news I have for you. This is going to be a shorter than usual episode because I only have 3 shows to tackle. Usually I have 6, and recently, a couple of weeks, I've had 7 because there was so much new stuff going on, and I didn't know we would be so slowed down here. But for the time being, let's do the 3 that I have. We're going to talk first about Amazing Stories. This is a reboot of a Steven Spielberg-produced show from the 80s. I believe it aired on NBC originally for 2 seasons, and it was from 85 to 87. So I don't really remember this show. I was only about 8 when it first came out. I remember it existing, and I believe I watched a couple of them because I think it was on Sunday nights at 7, so we were allowed to, even at that young age, we stayed up till like 9 because we were allowed to watch Cosby. So Cosby and Family Ties were on 8 and 8:30 on Thursday, so we were allowed to stay up for that. So we definitely watched at least some of these Amazing Stories, but Sundays at 7 was also ABC's Wide World of Disney, so I know we watched those a lot more. But anyway, it didn't air like a lot in reruns or anything, so I don't really remember anything much about it. But Spielberg here is back producing this for Apple TV Plus, and what they've done here, Apple is still trying to figure out what the best method of delivering the content is. Is it all at once? Is it once a week? Or is it what they did, when they first launched, which was most of their shows had 3 episodes right there, and then each week followed an episode. But here, it's 1 episode at a time, so like I said up at the top, it's an anthology, so I wanted to wait until at least 2 episodes were up to be able to review it, and I'm glad I did, because I think the second episode is probably better than the first. In fact, I'm sorry, it's definitely better than the first. Neither one is great, but basically this is a show about the supernatural. It's a bit sci-fi. You never quite know exactly what you're going to get. It's not all like Twilight Zone type stuff, but for example, the first episode deals with time travel, and the second episode deals with these 2 best friend girls that run track together. It turns out they're lesbians too, but one of them dies, and she comes back to help the other one, with her running skills and stuff. So she's like a ghost. So they're all sort of in that vein. It's a PG-rated show, so it is very family friendly. I guess depending on how you feel about the lesbian kissing in the second episode, but for the most part, it's a family show, and Spielberg has done great with family stuff. E.T. obviously was one of the first family things he did, but then this came in the mid-'80s on NBC, and then he got into the animated game with like Animaniacs and Tiny Toons and stuff. So he's always done, I think, very, very well with family-type programming, not kids shows necessarily, but family shows. And so this is falling in line here, and each one is going to be written and directed by different people. So each one's going to definitely be like a standalone story. The only person I really recognize in either of the two episodes is Dylan O'Brien was the star of the first one, the time traveling one. He was from The Maze Runner. I want to say he was on some MTV show. I think it was Teen Wolf. I think he was maybe the star of that, but I know him from The Maze Runner anyway. But in that first one, he and his brother are fixing up this old house that they just bought, and there's a thermostat in the basement that sort of allows him to time travel. Travels to like the 18-somethings, let's say 60s or something, 70s, and falls in love with this girl. She doesn't believe that he's a time traveler, and blah blah blah. And then the second one, they're track stars, they're best friends, we find out later they're lesbians, but the one dies, she comes back, and the girl can only see her when she's running, or only talk to her. I guess she doesn't really see her, but she can only talk to her when she's running. So that's how she helps her improve her running time, because she runs because she wants to be with her friends. So this is a very safe show. And I guess you would expect that with a family-based show. But, they don't always have to be. Like I would consider The Mandalorian a family show. It's in the Star Wars universe. But I think it certainly takes chances and does some, ducking and diving and stuff. This is pretty safe. And the stories are not very original. Most of the beats in really both of these stories, but especially the first one, are rather generic. They've been done time and time again in countless, especially the time traveling stuff of that first episode with movies and TV shows. It's been done and done and done. So, what do we rely on here? The acting. Well, the acting's fine. It's serviceable. I wouldn't say it's bad acting. But I also don't think these guys are going to get Emmys for their work here. And the scripts are okay. I mean, the stories and the scripts sort of go hand in hand, because it's like you can't have a pretty generic setup and then have I guess you could, but it's rare that you have a very safe setup and then this witty dialogue or this, really over-the-top creative dialogue. It just doesn't happen here. My other fault with it is that the effects are cheesy and horrible. They have really, whatever the opposite of spared no expense is, they have given no expense to this show. I feel like I don't think it's as bad as it probably would have been in the 80s, but it's along the same vein of like, I don't know, a sci-fi show from maybe like the early to mid 90s, like with that kind of budget. It just did not wow me. In fact, it underwhelmed, I would say. So you've got to go really based off the acting, I guess, because that's sort of the best thing about it. And it's not like any of these were bad, and you could definitely sit down and watch them with your family. Obviously, families are looking for things to watch during the shutdown here and the quarantine. You could certainly do worse than this, but I think with all the options out there, you can certainly find better as well. So I leave Amazing Stories, the new 2020 reboot, with a C+. So up next is the HBO show The Plot Against America. This is based on a Philip Roth book, who I was familiar with the name, but when I looked him up, I don't really know any of the things that he's done, really. The Human Stain was a famous book, and I know they made that into a movie, but everything else, not so much. Portnoy's Complaint I've heard of, I guess. But the novel came out here in 2004, and the show is created and written by David Simon and Ed Burns, who, not Ed Burns like the actor, but Ed Burns that worked on The Wire. They both created The Wire for HBO. So obviously they have a rich history with HBO and good programming there. This is a limited series, as HBO loves to do. So there's going to be 6 total, but they've only aired 1 so far. So I was only able to watch the first one. I mean, on the review show, usually I only watch the first one anyway, unless it is like an anthology. But with only 3 shows this week, I was like, oh, well, if something really intrigues me, I can watch a second episode. But it's not out yet, so we're going to have to wait for that one. It's airing on HBO every Monday. Yes. So Monday you can catch episode 2 of this. It stars in part Winona Ryder. She's not really the star, but it's kind of about Philip's upbringing and childhood in the early 40s. And he is a character here, played by Ashe Robertson. He's a new kid, I don't know. But Winona Ryder is in it. Zoe Kazan is in it as well. David Krumholtz is in it. So, it's got a few stars. John Turturro is here as well as their rabbi. And essentially it takes a revisionist look at what would have happened if Charles Lindbergh, who I did not know this about Charles Lindbergh, but apparently it's true. He was a raging racist. And so I knew him, of course, from his, airplane work. But apparently, in the real world, he was this horrible anti-Semite and racist and all this. So this takes a look at what if he had run for president against FDR and turns, the nation towards a more fascist regime. Now, okay, did HBO want to take this particular work of Philip Roth's, because he wrote the book in 2004, way before Donald Trump or any of that. Did HBO in 2020 or 2019, I guess, decide to take a look at this book because of things that are going on now in America? My guess would be yes. But luckily, it isn't, at least in the first episode so far, it's not very, beat you over the head with, propaganda, I should say, because we're looking at it through the eyes of this Jewish family, and I think at any time, in any, any rational person that's not an anti-Semite and not a racist would look at this family and feel, sorry for them, but feel for their pain if there was this sort of person as the president. So I'm sure there's a little bit of politicizing here for the current times that was on HBO's mind, but this is something that is near and dear to Philip Roth's heart, because this is based on sort of his family, but with the twist of, okay, if big old racist Charles Lindbergh was the head of our country. So it takes a look at that. Winona Ryder plays the mom. And in the first episode, we sort of just learn a little bit about the politics going on at the time. We learn a little bit about Charles Lindbergh's run for president. I assume as the 6 episodes go on, that will ramp up. And we learn a little bit about the members of the family. But, look, there's a lot of people in the family. There's a lot of characters in this show. An hour did not quite give me everything I needed to know. It definitely set up a few characters, and there's a real good plot line with the cousin whose work thinks he's stealing, so they fire him, and that becomes a whole sort of he said she said kind of thing, and we find out the reasons he's doing stuff, and I thought that was very interesting. But because of the number of characters here, I get the feeling that over 6 full episodes even, we're not going to get to know these characters as much as I would probably like to. But I thought it was riveting. I mean, the hour just flew by. All 3 of these shows are hour-long episodes. Even Amazing Stories is 50 to 55 minutes. And as usual on HBO, these are full hours. It's not, on network you get 44 minutes or something if it's an hour-long show, but this is a full hour, and it flew by. I was really engrossed by these characters, and I love Winona Ryder. She's one of my favorites from way back when, back to the Beetlejuice and Mermaids and Edward Scissorhands days. But I just don't know how in 6 episodes we're going to get to know everybody as much as we would like to, I think. But I keep harping on. It's funny. I keep harping on these miniseries. Like, oh, back in the day, miniseries were only 4-hour affairs. 2 hours each on two different nights. And now Chernobyl and all these shows are, on Netflix are doing like 8 hours, 10 hours for a limited series. Here, I think we could have gotten maybe 8. Just based on the first episode, because I don't think even the first episode delves in nearly as much as we need it to if this is only going to last 6 episodes. So I'm going to leave this show, The Plot Against America, with a B+. I really wish I got to see a second episode, because this is one where I really wanted to. A lot of times especially like when I do the Netflix shows, I could watch the whole season if I want to, if I have 8 or 10 hours to kill, but I usually don't, so I just watch the first episode. But here I really wanted to sink my teeth in a little bit more, especially since I had the time. So third is Temple. And like I said earlier, this is originally from Sky One. It ran back in September in the UK. And it's now on Spectrum Originals, which is, what the hell is Spectrum? I don't know. I have to download these things because I don't have Spectrum, and I don't think Spectrum's even available in Pennsylvania. But these are the guys that brought you the Mad About You reboot. So now they're bringing you Temple. My guess would be, this wouldn't be like on a BBC, America, obviously, because it's not from BBC, it's from Sky One. But there's pretty easy access these days to shows from England, whether it's on Amazon Prime or whatever. So you may be able to find this somewhere else. Even if you don't have this Spectrum channel. But the reason I kind of decided to watch it, even though it's hard to find, is not only because I had no other shows to watch this week, but it stars Mark Strong, who has been around a while. Most recently, I think, I would say he was the villain in Shazam, but he's done a bunch of things over the years. He was in Kick-Ass, he was in Zero Dark 30, of course, the Kingsman movies, yeah. So he's been in, a bunch of stuff that I really like. So when I saw he was attached, I was like, okay, I'll check it out. So I watched the first episode of this, and basically the premise is he is this brilliant surgeon who is housing an illegal makeshift hospital, basically, in the abandoned service tunnels near Temple Underground Station, which is why the show is called Temple. And he brought it up basically to help his ailing wife. And then halfway through this first episode, one of his friends tells a criminal about it because the guy couldn't go to the hospital or he would get in trouble with the law. So his friend sent him to this underground place that the character's name is Daniel Milton, that Mark Strong plays. So he sent them to Dr. Milton's, underground lab or whatever. And now he's got sort of a crisis of, okay, well, this is illegal what I'm doing, but if anybody finds out about it, I'm going to get shut down. My wife is going to get screwed. So, but okay, you already told this dude, so it's cool. So now he's sort of having a crisis of, what does this represent down here? Who are we going to help? So that in itself is kind of interesting. Even the pilot episode takes some interesting twists with it. It has been renewed for season 2. Right now there are, I think, 6 episodes that they did. The UK, they never do too many episodes. They did 8. That's rare. And what's nice is all 8 were directed by one of 3 people. So you had the first 3 were directed by one person, the 4 through 6 were directed by another person, and 7 and 8 were directed by the same person. So I like that because it will help give a show like this consistency, which it needs, because there's a lot of moving pieces to the look and the tone of the show. I think Mark Strong is great in it. I think there are some plot holes even early on. And the villains so far, they're very villainy, and and I'm not sure why yet. So hopefully that will be in subsequent episodes. But they're sort of just like trying to, attack the doctor and attack, the hospital and whatever. but why, we don't know yet. So hopefully that will be revealed, because they're very like ominous, I guess you could say, and as a result, very underwritten. But I enjoyed the show. I thought it was very dark. I know they're underground a lot, but there needed to be even in the daytime or daylight scenes, but there were no daylight scenes. It was all like at night or underground, almost the whole show. So that was kind of a bummer. But overall, I think it's an interesting show, and Mark Strong is great as always. Usually, he is playing more of you know, a mentor role like he did in The Kingsman. So I like. I don't know. I liked the movie Shazam, but he was definitely like hamming it up. He was like kind of corny. So I like it, but at the same time, this is sort of a more split identity, because he is doing illegal things. He's doing, what he thinks is best for his wife, but it is illegal, and it is, not what he should be doing, I guess. But it's one of those things where it's like, we as the audience are like, well, if I was in that position, I would do anything to save my spouse too, but now he's going to be helping to harbor criminals as well. And for him, that seems like a crisis of faith or what have you, as I think it would be for a lot of us. So I think it's an interesting show. I'm going to leave Temple with a B. And that's it. That's all she wrote for this week. I know I purposely did not watch Little Fires Everywhere yet, because I know that's going to be the big linchpin of next week's news and reviews. I think there's like one other show that I know is coming on. But other than that, I don't know what I'm going to be reviewing here these next few weeks on the TV news and reviews. I assume a lot of the streamers already have things lined up. I mean, Netflix, there's something almost every week. Same with, Apple TV, every like couple of weeks are getting something on there. Disney Plus, I don't know what the status of their stuff is, because they've shut down everything. I know a lot of their Marvel shows were still, in the works. But, yeah, anyway, tomorrow is going to be Frasier Friday, so there is a Frasier review going up, and that's going to be for the first part of Season 8. So if you're watching Frasier along with Frasier Friday with me and Joe, you can be entertained by that. I'm going to eventually get to editing some of the movie reviews that Justin and I did for the top 100 grossing movies of 2019. We're going to split that into 4 sections of, tackling 25 movies in each video. But other than that, next week's Connors, next week's Masked Singer, I'll do videos on that. But in between all of those, I don't know, I'm just going to, I might, pick some of these and review like a random movie or a random show, or maybe finish up on a show, or follow up on a show, I should say, that I reviewed like in the fall, that I only reviewed the pilot for, but now I can watch the whole series because it's all up, or whatever. I don't know. If there's any suggestions of what you guys would like to hear about, let me know. I've actually had a suggestion in the can for a while about the Laurie Metcalf episodes of Desperate Housewives, of which she won an Emmy for back in the day, from one of my Roseanne and Connors fans. Wanted me to sort of watch that, and I do have the Desperate Housewives box set, so that's something I might be able to tackle. I might do some music too. I have a ton of CDs and stuff too. Maybe bust out some old records. I don't know. We live in very odd times right now, so nothing is certain. Every day is different. But thank you so much for watching. And we'll definitely have another TV news and reviews up within the next 6 or 7 days. So thanks for watching, and we'll see you next time. Bye.